Hello beautiful friends, I have another Cut to Your Design Team layout to share with you today. I'm using this cut file which is called the Good List, and I have a sequence of photos which perfectly documents what I think is a funny little story about doing some Christmas baking with my little boy. But we'll get into that in just a moment. To start off with, I've left a little bit more of my process in for this video, so you may notice it's slightly longer than I would normally upload. But I wanted to include a little bit more of the process for you. So I'm starting off with creating my background, and I actually wanted to double matte this white layer, this background. So I've trimmed my white cardstock down to, I believe it's about 11.5 by 11.5. Then using that red and black check or plaid print, not sure what you would call that, I have trimmed or gutted the inside of it. Then with this green striped or checked pattern, I've trimmed that one down to, I think it was about 11.75 inches by 11.75 inches. And then I've cut another 1 inch piece from the middle. So hopefully that makes sense along with what you've seen me doing. And I've popped my white paper down onto the green, and then I'm going to pop the whole lot down onto this red check or plaid piece. And when I am doing this, I use my little fine line tip and just run a really thin line of wet adhesive underneath, which then allows me to take it off to my sewing machine, as you see here, and add some stitching around the border. So for this one, I used a minty green thread, and I did a messy double stitch because yeah, this story is a little bit quirky, a little bit fun, and I thought that messy double stitch reinforces that. So I've printed off 4 photos. They're a little bit smaller than I usually scrap with, and I wanted to create something like a photo strip. So I've got just a scrap piece of plain white cardstock, and I am using my T-square ruler to make sure that I've got them pretty straight there, and I am laying them down in sequence or in the order that they were taken. So what this little layout documents is we were baking some gingerbread cookies, and my little boy is very inquisitive. He keeps us on our toes, and he just loves food. And he has, from the time he was a baby, he has always been one of these kids that just has to put everything in his mouth. So as we were baking these cookies, my husband had a camera and he captured the moment. So I was rolling out the dough, we were cutting the shapes out and then laying them down onto the tray ready to go into the oven. And I kept telling my son not to touch them, not to touch them, not to touch them. And of course he couldn't help himself. He was touching them and trying to pick them up and eat them before they had been cooked. So this sequence of 4 photos, you can really see how that took place. And it's one of those moments that I am super, super glad that we captured on camera, because it's something that I'm sure we're going to look back on and laugh about in years to come. So while I have been telling you the story of these photos, I have grabbed some pattern papers, and I should mention that this is the Crepe Paper Hey Santa collection that I'm using here. So I grabbed some pattern papers and I've just trimmed them down, and off camera I have added a row of stitching, and they are going to be clustered behind my photo strip. But before I did that, I knew that I wanted to add a little bit of mixed media on the background, on the white background, to sit behind my cut file. I wanted to bring in some more of the green, and I just grabbed one of my Lindy's Stamp Gang Magical Greens without testing it first. I kind of tried to eyeball it. And as you can see, it is a really, really bright, really limey green, and it doesn't actually go with any of the greens that I have used in this layout. But I didn't want to scrap it. I wanted to make it work, and as soon as it went down, I already had a plan in mind on how I was going to make that work, and we will come back to that towards the end of the layout. But first of all, I also wanted to add some really chunky black splatters, just again to reinforce the cheekiness and the messiness that goes along with this story. So to get those black splatters, I have just put some black acrylic paint into this little pot, added some water, and it's now a good medium to splatter. So that's where the cut file is going to go. Now you can see me bringing in those 3 pattern papers, and I didn't want them to be perfectly aligned. I kind of wanted them to sit off center with each other. So I'm just going to have a little bit of a play around with everything on the background here before I start sticking stuff down, just to make sure I've got things where I wanted them. So I'm going to lay or create my little my little layer of pattern papers first, and I'm just going to stick those down. As you can see, they're not straight, they are intentionally crooked, and I made sure that I had that darker green off to the left hand side of the page because I didn't want it to clash with the bright green that I've got underneath the cut file. So one thing I will say with that green that turned out to be not the right green, it still works, and the reason that it still works is that I have used a couple of different greens throughout this layout. So on the mat, the mat that sits behind my white background, there's 2 different greens there. There's a different green in the stitched border, and there are 2 different greens in the pattern paper piece that is sitting behind my photo strips, and then another green there with the mixed media. So because there are so many different shades of green in this layout, having that really bright limey green, it actually works. If I was to have just one green and then the limey green, that wouldn't work. It would be a really obvious mismatch. But because there are multiple tones and shades of the same color, that is how you can still make it work. So that's my little design tip for today if you are someone that's working with a lot of different colors. And as you've just seen me do, I have some foam behind the cut file, and I have adhered that down using my T-square ruler to make sure that it is sitting nice and straight. And that little checkbox piece came separately, so that's just going to adhere down with some wet adhesive flat onto my photo. And then off camera, you can see I've got all my journaling strips. I toyed with the idea of popping them up in the top right of the page, but then I thought they really just belonged directly above the cut file alongside the photo strip. But I knew that I wanted to put something in this top right, and the reason for that is because I have most of my elements, my photo, and the cut file, most of them are down towards the bottom left of the page. That creates a lot of visual weight down there. So adding a small cluster or a smaller cluster up on the top right really helps to balance it out so the layout doesn't feel like it's unbalanced. I have a couple of tags which have mostly, I believe, come from one of the cut apart sheets in the collection, and I'm going to use those on the top right and also repeat that down to the bottom left just alongside my photo. I grabbed from my stash some baker's twine. One of them is a black and white with a shimmering gold thread running through it, and the other is this really chunky, thick and chunky red and white twine, and I've alternated those, and I have kept this bit of the process in because I struggled with getting them right, and I thought I would leave that in because I am a big fan of showing you the parts of the process that don't always go to plan. I think it's really important to see and to know that we all have these little scrappy moments where things just don't work out quite the way we want them to. So I know that the twine is not looking the way that I want it to look, but I thought I would continue on with my embellishing and then come back to it and see what I could make work. So to that top right cluster, I've added a banner piece that says Holiday Cheer, a little present sticker, and a couple of tiny word strip stickers just to finish off. Oh, and a little gumdrop. A little gumdrop goes up there as well. I have this little, we call them lollies here in Australia, but in other parts of the world I think they're called sweets. So it's a wrapped, I suppose, a peppermint candy sweet, and I'm tucking that into that little spot there inside the cut file, along with a black sort of star shape that is a sticker that's inside the sticker book. And I'm going to create a tiny little cluster up to the top left as well. I wanted to bring a Santa in, but the Santa sticker that you can see to the left there was just a little bit too small for the space that I wanted it to fill. So one of the pattern papers in the collection has got a whole stack of Santas on different coloured oval backgrounds. So I've just fussy cut one of those out, and that is now the perfect size to fill that little space there, which overlaps on the two tags. Now here is where I start to mess around with the bits of twine. So I had initially thought, as you see me doing now, I would bring in my little tiny stapler and I would staple down the tails of those tags. And I went ahead and I did that and I trimmed them down, but it just didn't look right. So I'm pulling out those staples there. I'm using my little, it's a little tool. I can't quite remember what it's called, but it's definitely one of my most used tools. It's always out on my desk. It's got a little poker on one side and a flat piece on the other side. So I pulled them out, and then I thought, well, maybe the problem was just that I had the staple in the wrong place. So I tried putting it in a different spot, but no, still wasn't happy with it. So out comes that staple again. And of course now I've got a couple of little holes that are sitting there, but I have a plan on how to fix those. So in the end, what I decided to do was just to cut that tail off completely, and I'm much happier with that. And I have covered up one of those holes with that black star sticker. And now I'm going back to embellishing, or back to my little embellishment clusters alongside my photo. That one on the top left there, I wanted to keep it really quite small and simple because there wasn't a lot of room there, and I didn't want to make that particular corner too heavy. I'm not quite sure what I'm off doing at the moment. I probably should have edited that out. Off grabbing the sticker book. So I've got some more of these little black star stickers which come from the sticker book, and another, am I going to pull another word, a phrase sticker out? Yes, I am. And I'm going to try and stick that down there, but no, it's not going to make it. The reason I'm trying to add another little word sticker in is because I have got the little phrase stickers on the top right, and so I wanted to add some consistency, but there wasn't really space to add one to this little cluster on the bottom left of the photo. So to finish off, I'm adding, well, not quite to finish off, I'm adding some of these clear stickers, and I'm just grabbing them and tucking them underneath just as another little bit of an interesting element behind the clusters. And in just a moment, you're going to see how I bring in some more of that lime green to make the mixed media work. I've grabbed one of my Nuvo drops, which I do happen to have in, it's a really bright limey appley green, maybe it's more of an apple green, and I'm just going to add quite a few of those scattered around the page, and that just helps to tie it in with the mixed media. And that is it to finish this layout. So I've got some close-up photos coming here. Of course, you'll find all the details and the links that you need down in my description box below. So I will leave it there and say thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.